Isang mapagpalang araw, mga kaibigan. Welcome to Field Study 1. Bago tayo magsimula, I want you to understand something very important about this course. Field study is different from many of the subjects you have taken so far. Sa mga ibang subjects kasi, you learn concepts first and then demonstrate that you understand them through examinations, activities, discussions, or written work. Ay iba ang field study. Sa field study, you are going to enter the world of actual teaching and learning. You will observe real schools. You will observe real classrooms. You will observe real teachers. And most importantly, you will observe real learners. That means, field study is not simply about completing observation forms. Hindi yung papasok ka sa classroom, uupo ka sa likod, checking a few boxes and saying, done! Your goal is to learn how to see what is happening in a classroom and understand why it is happening. That is a very different skill. And that is exactly what we are going to begin developing today. Our first topic is the school environment. And I want you to think about this topic not simply as what does the school look like? Anong itsura ng eskwelahan? The deeper question is, what kind of environment does the school create for learning? Because a school is not simply a building. A classroom is not simply four walls, chairs, my teacher's table, blackboard, or projector. A school environment can influence how learners behave, how they feel, how they participate, and ultimately, how they learn. So ngayon, we are going to learn how to look at school environment through the eyes of a future teacher. Let's start with a memory. Before we discuss theories, laws, concepts, I want you to think about something personal. No? Close your eyes for a moment and picture the classroom where you learned the most. Hindi naman ibig sabihin na na i-remember po natin ng mga classroom kung saan tayo nakakuha ng highest na grade, no? No. I'm asking you to remember the classroom where you felt that you actually grew. Maybe you became more confident. Maybe you learned how to speak in front of other people. Maybe you discovered that you were actually good at something. Maybe you learned to ask questions. Maybe you learned that making mistakes was okay. Maybe you simply felt that your teacher believed in you. Now, open your eyes. If I ask you to describe that classroom using just one word, what would you say? Maybe your word would be safe, organized, encouraging, interesting, colorful, friendly, challenging, fair, comfortable. Notice something. Some of those words describe things we can physically see. But some describe things we cannot simply measure by looking at the walls. This tells us something very important. A school environment has multiple dimensions. And these dimensions interact with one another to shape the learner's experience. So let's begin with the first one. The physical dimension of the school environment. When we talk about the physical environment, we are talking about the things that physically surround the learner. Think about the school building, the classrooms, library, the laboratories, the comfort rooms, the clinic, the playground, the corridors, the lighting, the ventilation, the seating arrangement, the instructional materials, the computers, the internet connection. Even something as simple as the location of the teacher's table or the arrangement of student chairs can influence what happens inside a classroom. So when you enter a classroom during your field study observation, don't just ask, is the room beautiful? No, hindi yan kasi enough, no? Instead, we should ask, is this environment conducive to learning? There are those are two very different questions. No? Yung isang classroom kasi, pwede naman na beautiful siya, pero poorly designed, no? Parang hindi pangit yung pagka-disenyo. A classroom can be simple but highly effective. For example, imagine a classroom with beautiful decorations na sa lahat ng mga walls, no? At first, it looks impressive, but then you notice that the walls are so visually crowded that learners have difficulty identifying the important instructional materials, no? So, sobrang daming posters, alam mo yung tipong information overload na. Or perhaps the classroom is beautifully decorated, pero walang hangin, poorly ventilated, no? Or perhaps it has modern equipment, but the room is so crowded that sometimes students can barely move. Or sometimes, ang daming ang modern equipment, hindi naman ginagamit. Hindi magamit kasi walang kuryente, walang internet, no? That is why observation requires more than simply looking. It requires critical thinking. So what should we look for? When you observe the physical environment, pay attention to several areas. First, facilities and infrastructure. Are the classrooms structurally safe? Are there enough classroom? Are the library, laboratory, clinic, and comfort rooms functional? Paano naman po yung facilities? Are they accessible to learners with disabilities? Second, we look at classroom design and management. How are the chairs arranged? Are they grouped in rows? May groups ba? U-shape? Are learners able to interact with one another? Can the teacher move around easily? Can the students see the board or screen clearly? Baka naman yung mga harapan lang ang nakakabasa ng nasa board, yung mga nasa likod o nasa gitna, wala na, no? Third, observe lighting and ventilation. Meron bang natural light? Are the artificial lights functioning? Mainit ba yung kwarto? Is there adequate airflow? This may sound like small details, like we are nitpicking, but imagine trying to concentrate on a 2-hour lecture in a classroom that's extremely hot, dark, noisy, or poorly ventilated. No? The physical environment can either support learning or make learning more difficult. Fourth, observe safety and sanitation. Nasaan po yung mga exits? Are emergency procedures visible? Are fire extinguishers available and accessible? Is there clean drinking water? Are the comfort rooms clean and functional? Is first aid available? And finally, look at instructional resources. Are books available? Are visual materials available also? Is technology being used properly or appropriately? Are learning resources appropriate for the learners and the subject? No? So yun, the physical environment. Why does the physical environment matter? Now, here's something I want you to remember. The physical environment is not simply about aesthetics. It's not about whether the classroom looks good in a Facebook post. It's about whether the environment allows learners to learn safely, comfortably, and effectively. Consider a learner sitting in a classroom with poor ventilation. Another learner sitting in a room where the chairs are so tightly packed that movement is difficult. Another learner has difficulty seeing the board because of poor lighting or obstructed yung view. Another learner cannot comfortably use the classroom because of physical design does not consider accessibility. These are not merely architectural concerns. No? These are educational concerns. And this is where educational policy and law become important. In the Philippine educational context, several laws and DepEd policies establish responsibilities related to the learning environment. For example, we have the RA 9155 or the Governance of Basic Education Act of 2001. No, this law strengthened school-based management and emphasized the responsibility of schools and communities in creating conditions conducive to learning. Batas Pambansa Bilang 232 o the Education Act of 1982, it establishes important rights and responsibilities concerning education and the educational environment. We also have DepEd at Order Number 10, Series of 2016, where ito yung nagpa-institutionalize ng comprehensive water, sanitation, and hygiene in schools. No? It's commonly known as WIN-S. The message here is simple. Water, sanitation, hygiene, and functional facilities are not luxuries. They are part of creating a healthy learning environment. And we also have policies concerning disaster preparedness and risk reduction. Schools need to be prepared for emergencies. Learners need to know what to do during earthquakes, fires, and other hazards. So when you observe a school, don't simply write, the school has fire extinguishers. Ask yourself, no? Kahit maraming fire extinguishers yan, are the fire extinguishers accessible? Are they properly positioned? No? Baka naman, bago pa naman makuha yung mga fire extinguishers na yun, nasunog na yung buong school, no? But most importantly, no, do learners know what to do during an emergency? Magsisitakbuhan lang ba yung mga yan? No? This is the difference between description and professional observation. No? Pag sa description tulad nito, no, there is a fire extinguisher versus pag professional observation naman, the classroom has an accessible fire extinguisher and emergency procedures are visibly posted near the exit, di ba? Di ba mas okay tayo sa professional observation kaysa lang sa mere description? The second statement gives us evidence, no? And evidence is what you need in field study. The social and psychological environment. Now let's move to something much less visible. Remember the words we mentioned earlier, no? Safe, encouraging, fair, friendly, respectful. This describes the social and psychological environment. This refers to the relationships, emotional climate, interaction patterns, and a sense of belonging experienced by learners within the school. No? Isipin natin ng isang classroom atmosphere. No? When students enter the room, do they look comfortable? Are they afraid to make mistakes? Do they freely ask questions? Does the teacher listen? Do learners respect one another? Are some students consistently excluded? Are there sense of bullying? Does the teacher treat students fairly? These things are not always written in the classroom observation form, but they matter tremendously. Classroom climate. Isang napaka-useful na concept po ito. This refers to the overall emotional and relational atmosphere of the classroom. Imagine natin yung two classrooms, no? In classroom A, students are afraid to answer because the teacher immediately embarrasses anyone who gives a wrong answer, no? So anong nangyayari? Students rarely volunteer. They might avoid eye contact. They wait for the teacher to finish speaking. Now imagine another classroom, classroom B. No, the students know that mistakes are part of learning. The teacher still maintains standards. The students are expected to behave properly. But they are also encouraged to ask questions, participate, and try again if they make mistakes. Which classroom is more conducive to learning? No? The answer is not simply the teacher is nice. No? A good climate is not being permissive. No? The teacher doesn't need to be friendly also. No? It's about creating an environment where high expectations and psychological safety can exist together. Now, one of the most important relationships in a classroom is the relationship between teacher and learner. Ask yourself, is the teacher approachable? Does the teacher listen? Does the teacher show respect? Does the teacher provide feedback constructively? Does the teacher maintain appropriate professional boundaries? Does the teacher treat learners fairly? And here's an important point. Being a good teacher doesn't mean being everyone's friend. You can be warm and still have boundaries. You can be approachable and still enforce rules. You can be passionate, compassionate, and still maintain high standards. In fact, some of the most effective teachers are those who communicate. I care about you. And at the same time, I believe you are capable of more. No? Caring and of course, believing that someone is capable of becoming greater, that combination is powerful. Now, let's talk about peer relationships. Now, look beyond the teacher. Look at the learners themselves. How do the students treat one another? Do they cooperate? Do they listen? Do they include classmates? Do some students dominate group activities? Are quieter learners given opportunities to participate? Is there teasing that crosses the line into bullying? Are learners comfortable working with classmates who are different from them? We must remember, a classroom can have an excellent teacher and still have a problematic peer environment. That is why observation must look at the whole classroom system. Classroom management styles. Let's connect this with a familiar psychological framework. Psychologist Diana Baumried's work on parenting styles is often adapted to help us understand patterns of authority and support. We can think of 4 broad styles. No? The first is authoritative. This combines high structure with high warmth. The teacher has clear rules and expectations but also provides support, explanation, and respect. The second is authoritarian. There is high structure but low warmth. The teacher emphasizes obedience and control and sometimes with little opportunity for dialogue. The third is permissive. There is warmth but little structure. The teacher may be kind and approachable, but expectations and boundaries are unclear. And finally, we have neglectful or uninvolved. There is low structure and low support. No? So, if you could see this visual clue, no? Parang ganito siya. Now, I want you to think about your own experience as a student. What kind of teacher did you encounter most often? And perhaps more importantly, what kind of teacher do you want to become? You don't have to answer that aloud, no? But keep that question with you. No? Anong klaseng teacher ka? No? In the future, how will others perceive you? Because field study is not only about observing other teachers. It's also about gradually discovering the teacher you want to become. The cultural dimension. There's another dimension that we need to consider, and that is the cultural environment. Every school has a culture. You can sometimes feel it as soon as you enter. Some schools have a culture strongly associated with discipline. Others emphasize creativity. Others emphasize academic achievement. Others place strong emphasis on community involvement. Others may have traditions, celebrations, routines, and expectations deeply connected to the local community. School culture includes the shared values, traditions, beliefs, expectations, practices, and unwritten rules that shape life inside the school. And this becomes particularly important in the Philippines because our classrooms are incredibly diverse. You may have learners from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different regions, different languages, different cultural traditions, different religious backgrounds, different abilities, different family structures, different experiences. And later in this course, when we discuss learner diversity, we will examine these differences much more deeply. For now, remember this. A good school does not require every learner to become the same. A good school creates an environment where differences can exist, while learners are still treated with dignity, fairness, and respect. Child protection and school safety. This brings us to another critical area. A school environment must be safe, not only physically, but also socially and emotionally. DepEd Order No. 40 Series of 2012 or the DepEd Child Protection Policy involves it provides a framework for protecting children from abuse, violence, exploitation, discrimination, and bullying. Schools are expected to establish mechanisms for prevention, intervention, reporting, and referral. So when we say that a classroom should be safe, we mean more than the teacher is friendly. No. Safety has an institutional and legal dimension. A learner should not have to choose between education and personal dignity. A learner should not have to remain silent because they are afraid of humiliation, violence, bullying, or discrimination. And as future teachers, you have a responsibility to understand that. Learner-centered education. This also connects with RA number 10533, the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. The law reinforces the importance of learner-centered, inclusive, developmentally appropriate, and responsive education. Pero hindi naman ibig sabihin na na tatanungin na natin, no, is the teacher teaching? No. We also have to ask, are learners actually being given conditions that allow them to learn? Now, this is a major shift in teaching. The classroom is not designed simply for teacher convenience. It is designed around the learning needs of learners. Magkaroon tayo ng a thought experiment, no? Let me give you a situation. Imagine two classrooms, no? Classroom A, beautiful, air conditioning, modern computers, excellent lighting, comfortable chairs, large interactive display. Everything looks perfect. But the teacher constantly humiliates students. No? Students are afraid to ask questions. Mistakes are treated as failures. Some students are regularly excluded. Now imagine classroom B. It is a modest public school classroom. The chairs are old, the equipment is limited, the walls need repainting. But the teacher knows every learner by name. Students feel safe asking questions. They help one another. No? Mistakes are treated as opportunities to improve. The teacher maintains discipline but also shows genuine care. Now, here's the question. Which classroom provides better learning environment? Now, don't answer too quickly. No? The point is not that the physical resources don't matter. No, they absolutely matter. The point is that physical quality alone does not define educational quality. A learning environment is an interaction between physical conditions, relationships, cultures, safety, and pedagogy. No? So, meron tayong Venn diagram dito. No? So, dapat, kung anong meron sa physical, kung anong meron sa social, psychological, at anong meron sa cultural, dapat may conducive learning environment. You could not simply nitpick na physical and social, psychological, cultural, and all of this should be present. Now, the question now is, how do we observe a school? No? Remember, field study is about observation, but professional observation is different from ordinarily looking at something. When you walk into a classroom as a future teacher, you should train yourself to move through 3 levels. No, 3 levels yan. No, tulad dito. No? See, describe, interpret. No? What is actually happening? That is seeing. Second level, describe. What specific evidence can you record? And then the last one, the most important one, the interpretation. Interpret. What might this mean for teaching and learning? Don't simply write the classroom is crowded. No, that's observation, but it is incomplete. Instead, the classroom has 48 learners in a room with limited walking space. The chairs are arranged closely, making movement between rows difficult. Now you have evidence. Now let's go on another level. Bigyan natin ng interpretation. This arrangement may make individual monitoring and movement-based activities more difficult. No? So that's professional observation. But be careful. No? Interpretation should be based on evidence. Do not invent motives. Don't assume intentions. Don't write the teacher does not care about students. No? You don't know that. We don't know the full picture. Instead, write what you can actually observe. And that is one of the most important habits you will develop in field study. Separate what you saw from what you think it means. Your field study observation lens. When you enter a school, I want you to carry 3 questions with you. First, what do you see? Second, what evidence supports my observation? And third, how might this affect learning? No? So yun. What do you see? What evidence do I have? How might it affect learning? No? This simple framework will help you avoid superficial observations. Now, an observation example, let's practice. No? Suppose you enter a classroom, notice that the students are sitting in groups of 5. Your first observation might be the chairs are arranged in groups, but let's go deeper. No? You notice that the students are actively discussing their work. You notice that the teacher moves between groups. You notice that the students can easily see one another. Now you have more evidence. You might write, the classroom uses a 5-member group sitting arrangement. During the activity, learners discuss their answers with group members while the teacher moves between groups to monitor or participate. No? To monitor participation. No? Yan ang ebidensya. Then you can cautiously interpret. The arrangement appears to support peer interaction and collaborative learning during group activities. No? Notice the language that we use there. We don't say the sitting arrangement is definitely the best. No, we say it appears to support. Why? Because observation should be evidence-based and professionally cautious. No? Now, for your field study observations, I want you to pay attention to the physical and social psychological environment. No? And we have there napakita na siguro, no? Yung observation table natin. No? So yan. Now, don't just rate something, no? You provide evidence. For every rating you make yourself, what did I actually observe that led me to this rating? No? That question will make your observation much stronger. Now, what field study is really teaching you? I want you to understand the bigger purpose of this course. Field study is not trying to turn you into someone who simply knows how to complete forms. No, it is a training. It is training you to become a reflective practitioner. A reflective teacher does not simply say, "My students are noisy." No, a reflective teacher asks, "Why are they noisy? What happened before the noise started? Is the activity appropriate? Are instructions clear? Are students engaged? Is the classroom arrangement contributing to the problem? Are learners tired? Are there environmental distractors?" In other words, the reflective teacher does not immediately blame the learner. The reflective teacher investigates. And that is the mindset I want you to develop. No? The school environment as a teacher, balikan natin yung central question natin. What is a school environment? It is more than a building. It is more than chairs and tables. It is more than posters on the wall. The school environment communicates messages to learners. No? A clean and accessible school can communicate you matter. A classroom where students are encouraged to ask questions communicates your voice matters. A classroom where mistakes are treated as part of learning communities, you are allowed to grow. A school that protects children communicates you are safe here. And a classroom that respects diversity communicates you belong here. That is why I want you to remember this principle. The school environment is not merely a backdrop for learning. The environment itself teaches. Think about that. Before a teacher even begins the lesson, the environment is already communicating something. They talk. The arrangement of the chairs communicates something. The condition of the comfort room communicates something. The way teachers talk to learners communicates something. The way students treat one another, that also communicates something. The presence or absence of accessible facilities communicates something. The posters on the wall, they communicate something. The rules communicate something. The culture communicates something. The school is always teaching. The question is, what is it teaching? Now, let me leave you with one final question. When your future students walk into your classroom for the first time, what do you want the environment to tell them? Do you want it to say, "Be quiet, don't make mistakes, don't ask too many questions, you just follow instructions"? No? Or do you want it to communicate something more powerful? Perhaps, "You are safe here. You are respected here. You are expected to learn here. You are allowed to make mistakes here. You are capable of more than you think. Anak, tutulungan kita." That is the kind of question field study asks us to consider. Because before we become teachers who deliver lessons, we must first become teachers who understand the environments in which learning takes place. And that is where our journey in Field Study 1 begins. No? Welcome to the field. Let's learn how to observe, let's learn how to reflect, and eventually let's learn how to teach. Maraming salamat mga kaibigan. No? See you in our next meeting, where we will move from the environment surrounding the learner to something even more important, the learner himself or herself. No? We'll begin looking at learner development and learner diversity. For now, take care, keep observing, and always remember, don't just look at the classroom, learn to see it.